What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? MaceValor once again here on Unfiltered, and I want to talk today about DLC. Now, why do I want to talk about DLC? We just talked about GameStop the other day, and I really kind of want to go into a little bit of the ins and outs of DLC and how it pertains to us as consumers, right? Now, I talk strictly about money when it comes to the video game industry, primarily because PR, what we try to do is we try to make a good relationship between the company and the consumer, so we can maximize revenue or profit stream. Now, DLC is a very lucrative stream of revenue for us. Now, the thing is that people don't like, and I don't agree with as well, is this whole day one DLC. Now, you got to remember, the day one DLC, a lot of that stuff didn't cost anything extra. Now, you got to remember, you take man hours into producing DLC. You take actual money into producing DLC. There's a lot that really goes into it. Assets and all this stuff. And then, depending on the size of it, you might have voice talent. You might have more assets that are put into the game. This takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of money. So what a lot of developers will do is it's not that they plan ahead. What they do is they might have DLC planned for the future, but for the day one stuff and a lot of the pre-order stuff, those things are all set aside. Pre-order bonuses for DLC and day one DLC, all of that is just, hey, we've already made these assets. Let's put these aside. We're going to use these for we'll use these for GameStop, we'll use these for Best Buy, and we'll use these for Walmart. You purchase at these locations, and that's the deal that they'll have with those retailers from the publisher's side. And that is to incentivize the pre-orders from these retailers. Then when you buy the game and then the day it comes out, it's like, oh, that day one DLC, it's all this stuff. That was stuff that was already made in the game. And a lot of times it's like mission exclusives. I know that with there was a lot of PlayStation exclusive DLC for Assassin's Creed when it comes out. Usually it's like, hey, you buy on PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 or whatever, the new Assassin's Creed game, you're going to get a bonus mission DLC or whatever. These are things that are already implemented in the game, and they're just set aside just to entice people to come and grab them. Now, the day one DLC issue that I have is because this is something that's already made, that it's just free money, essentially. What you're doing is you're robbing the customer of a full experience. Now, a lot of times, I will say that you can have a full experience of a game without that extra DLC. It's usually needless filler fluff, either an extra mission, maybe some stupid costume for your character or something like that. But it's a lot of money. Now, this is something that I personally fucking hate, and the whole premise of DLC is law of averages. I've said this before, if you're doing a business structure based upon the law of averages, you need a new business structure. I'm telling you, because it's like, well, we may not have everyone in the world buy our product, but if a small fraction of a large group of people, small percentage, well, that's a lot of money. Yeah, sure, it is a lot of money, but as far as a business strategy, like, where does it leave us? So when you make a game and then you set aside content that is to later either be purchased as day one DLC, or you incentivize it with some sort of other method, it doesn't strike anything with a lot of the consumers. A lot of consumers get the game. They don't want to have to, psychologically, they don't want to feel like they're missing out on something. So it's like, oh, I got the game and there's already DLC for it. Now, a lot of times when DLC first came out, there's an extension to the game, right? It's like, oh, I've finished the game. Oh, wait, after like 2 weeks, oh, there's DLC. It's like, well, I've played the game, I finished it, there's DLC now, I'm going to want to go back to it. So they'll purchase the DLC. Now, because of day one DLC, well, instead of convincing people to stick with our game or come back to our game after they've completed it the first time around, we just want their money right out the gate. It's like, hey, we're not going to sit around and wait for you guys to decide that you want to come in and continue playing the game or to replay our game to experience this new DLC that we have offering for you. Instead, we're going to essentially sell you snake oil. We're going to sell you a product that should have been with the fucking product to begin with. We're going to sell you something that should have initially been with what you bought. That is something that I just can't fucking stand, right? Because this, I'm going to repeat it, this DLC, a lot of this DLC was made during the development cycle of the game. Hence, you know, like you would, like, honestly think of this shit, right? Do you really think any company would fucking make a game all the way to the distribution level, get it ready, send out to fucking all these retailers, and then be like, holy shit, we need day one DLC. Fucking let's start making this shit right fucking now, right? And then in the next 24 hours, pump out fucking 100 megabytes or what have you worth of content, fucking throw online to sell to people real quick. Fuck no. That just, no, it doesn't work that way. They just set shit aside. A lot of it's not really planned. What is planned is the stuff down the road. Now here's something that's really fucked up when it comes to DLC that I can't fucking stand. However, licensing. So when you buy a game and then there's DLC for it and you purchase the DLC, but then it's like, well, wait, why was that just like 80 kilobytes? Because all you're doing is downloading a set of values that tells the game, hey, this is like the completed value for XYZ. The content that's already in the game's data is now unlocked and allowed to be utilized. That's something that drives me fucking nuts. Why? Because that directly tells me, as someone who knows how this shit works, and a lot of you should know this too, when you download something, especially like a character, let's use Capcom as an example. It was Capcom Cross Tekken, right? Was that what it was called? Street Fighter Cross Tekken? Street Fighter Cross Tekken. What they did is that they sold DLC characters. But the characters, the models, the movesets, the voices, everything that you would essentially think to download that pertain to that character, all the story missions and shit like that, all of that was already on the disc. All of that was already on the digital download. So when you purchased, $5, $4.99 for this character, and you downloaded that 100 kilobyte fucking cache of information, it was just a set of values to tell the game, hey, they purchased this with their fucking money, let them play with this character. The characters were already on the fucking disc. That's something that I can't stand. Now, a lot of the times, why it's in this weird gray zone of why is that okay? Why is that okay? Why is it okay for a company to sell you a game and then literally force you to pay more for something that's already on the disc? Well, it comes down to licensing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say whether or not it's okay that this happens, right? Because let's talk about this morally and ethically. Hell fucking no, it's not okay. It just is what it is, though. So how do we rectify this? How do we, fix this conundrum of sorts? Well, you fucking don't, right? Companies are just gonna go fucking do this, and it's awful. It's horrible, really. It's fucking lazy. Number one, but it's the nature of the beast, essentially. Now, I have a lot of love for Capcom. They make some really good games. Their HD remasters are like some of the laziest shits I have ever seen in my fucking life. Now, I've played some of Capcom's HD remasters. Those are not HD remasters. Those are fucking ports that are upscaled. It's atrocious. But I will say that as a company, for the most part, Capcom... I love them to death. They're fucking great. But I have my issues. And Street Fighter Cross Tekken is definitely one of the ones that I detest the most. It's a shining example of what is wrong in the games industry when it comes to how publishers deal with the consumer. Now, a lot of times people want to go and blame the developer, but no, you want to blame the publisher. Because why? Someone pulls the string. The publisher also acts as financier of these things, right? So when a game is made by an indie company, it's just they're self-publishing, so it's just them as a developer. So a lot of times when you get DLC from an indie game, a lot of times it's usually just the soundtrack for the game. right? And then you're like, well, that's already in the game. Why should I have to buy that? That's where it's a little different. When you look at the DLC for indie games, and you look at it like the soundtrack for the game, why should you have to buy that if it's already there and on the disc? It's the argument that I just made. Why should you have to do this? Why should you have to do this? Because when it comes to indie games and when it comes to music, actually, yes, when it comes to music, it's music. It's not doing anything more or less to the game. It's literally just sounds. And a lot of times when these DLCs of the soundtrack of the game, it's usually something extra. They're extended tracks. A lot of times you'll play a game and you'll probably hear a couple of the tracks in the game. You'll probably hear only a glimmer of, right? I mean, there are games I've played where I've listened to the full album of the soundtrack of the game and heard scores that I've never heard before. So I will give a little bit of leeway, not because they're indie developers and all this stuff, but because the nature of what the product is that they're selling is very different. But when you sell people something that they already own, it's all about fucking licensing. So when you buy a game, you're essentially buying the right to play and utilize whatever's on that disc within that cache of downloaded information. You are buying the right to utilize that for personal entertainment. And then there's obviously a lot more that goes into it. That's why people don't read these licenses when they get these games. It's a lot of times when you're buying music. When you're buying music, you're essentially buying a license. You're not necessarily buying the music. If you were to buy an actual song, like, I mean straight up, like, I own this fucking song, you own the rights to it. That's what it comes down to. When you really buy something that you have ownership over, it's the rights. That's why when you buy a lot of products, there's, like, when I buy this monitor, for example, there's a license agreement that comes with this monitor. I am allowed to own the physicality of this monitor. But upon reverse engineering, taking it apart, doing X, Y, Z, I void warranties, number one. That's the very first thing that goes out the window. You fuck with it, we ain't helping you with it no more. Trying to reverse engineer or anything like that or replicate what this is made out of, I'm not allowed to do that because in the agreement of me purchasing this, that's just how it stands. Now, you would think, I bought this at a secondhand market. I bought this monitor at Goodwill, right? So you would think that because I wasn't the initial purchaser, that I would not hold the license to it. This goes all the way back to GameStop. It follows suit with the product because of the patents that are inherently in what it is. So when you buy a game at GameStop that's used, well, I'm buying the disc, right? So I should own the game. You fucking don't, because the license travels with the product. It's just how it fucking works. And there's another thing that they tried to do. I haven't seen it in recent years, but you would buy a multiplayer game, or a game that had a really strong multiplayer presence, and what would happen is you would go to play online, but because you bought it from GameStop, it's like, oh, you got to pay an extra $5 to activate the multiplayer, because these games, when they came brand new, it came with a download code that said, oh, we just want to verify that you have the game and unlock certain things for you. That was a stab to try to stop GameStop in the past. It didn't really fucking work. It just pissed a bunch of people off. But licensing is very, very tricky. So when it comes to licensing and the DLC for something that's already on the disc, it's already a part of the bulk assets of the game. How the fuck does that shit work? Why is that okay? Once again, it comes down to a moral conundrum, because the license follows everything. So you would think that if the license is whatever I can have within the disc is I can utilize for my personal enjoyment, but you're leaving something out. Then there's the argument. It's like, well, you're really paying for that little bit of information that unlocks the rest of the stuff. But the end result of you purchasing that is to unlock stuff. So therefore, when we sell you on it and we market it to you, we marketed it as you unlocking these characters. But in reality, you're really just downloading this little bit of information. It's fucking horseshit. But it brings in a lot of money. So I'm going to kind of let this go for today, but I do want to continue talking again about DLC and bring some real numbers in for you guys and let you know why it matters so much for companies to push DLC so much. There's the nature of the beast. This is where we have come today. In the next video, I'll kind of explain, not just from my pissed off perspective of how this is horseshit, which I'm going to agree with a lot of you guys it is, but I will come down to the professional level and tell you it's just the nature of doing business. And I got to make sure I can feed my family. And if that means selling off some DLC, then I'm going to be selling off some DLC. It makes shareholders happy. It makes, you know, my table got fucking bread and bacon on it, right? It's just what it is. This is MaceValor. Had a great time. Also, if you've made it this far, as always, still up for grabs. Still up for grabs. 10,000 subscribers. We'll let her go. So, this is MaceValor signing off.